Hello, friends. Welcome back to Weird Wednesdays. Tattooed Biker here. And this evening I've got two viewer-submitted stories of terrifying, unexplained true experiences from the deep woods. One from central Idaho, and another all the way from Australia. Be ready to drop your thoughts on these down in the comments. I can't wait to hear them. Now, let's ride. Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, I just found this channel, and I thought finally a place to tell this story. This happened when I was much younger, so details may be a little shoddy, but honestly, I remember it like it was yesterday. I live in Australia, and we don't have much woodlands here, besides a few that span on for a couple of 100 acres or so. Nothing like what Americans have. And when I was younger, I'd get lost in these woods a lot, and sometimes even sleep in them, for a couple of days at most, surviving off fish and creek water, although I never had any creepy encounters besides just this one time. I was about 10 years old, and just like I do at least once every 2 or 3 years, I'd gotten lost in the woods again. I was completely fine during the day as I had eaten lunch prior to realizing that I had no idea where I was. So I had the old, "ah shit, here we go again" moment, and decided to walk around to find some sticks and make a little fire. I knew a lot about outdoor survival as my family went camping a lot, and I watched videos on YouTube all the time, since it interested me, and I love the woods. I had set a fire up as it started getting dark, and I was about to put out my fire, before I saw a small deer on the tree line, just nearly out of range of my firelight. It was staring at me, which gave me some chills, but I just went, a little deer, and waved to it. The deer scurried off into a bush behind it, and I couldn't see it anymore. And that's when I heard this really weird noise, like twig snapping. And all of a sudden, a much larger deer came out of the same bush I just saw the small one jump into. At this point, I knew something was off, so I stood up and stared at the deer as it stared back at me. And I was mentally preparing myself for the idea that this thing might run at me. I was a little kid, so what am I supposed to think? The deer started walking a bit towards me, and I backed up a little and crouched down. But as the deer kept getting closer, and I kept backing up, I looked down and realized this thing had a hoof directly in the fire, and it wasn't reacting to it at all. This creeped me out. I mean, his fur was burning, and it was starting to burn its skin, but it just wasn't reacting. I immediately set off bolting, but I heard it coming after me. Not really running, but fast enough to keep up with my little legs. I came over this small hill and jumped down into a bush to try and hide from it. And that's when it happened. The scariest thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and I still remember it so vividly. The deer silhouette against the moonlight appeared, and as I stared, the deer, it let out this blood-curdling call that I've never heard from another animal before. And all of a sudden, the silhouette started caving in on itself. I could literally hear its bones snapping and flesh ripping, and this thing just kept getting smaller, and then suddenly it got much bigger, and I closed my eyes because I just couldn't watch anymore. When I opened them, there was a man standing where the deer had stood, or at least the silhouette of a man. He was looking around and then started calling out in this creepy, almost distorted voice, "Hello? Hello?" And he repeated this for about 10 minutes while I just sat there in silence, refusing to answer whatever it was that stood just a couple meters above me. The man then just walked off into the trees, and I heard that same awful snapping noise from before until it eventually faded away. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed in the bush the rest of the night, terrified that this thing could still be lurking around the area, waiting for me to appear again. Once the morning came, I walked in a straight line until I reached a road I recognized, and then I ran all the way home. I didn't tell my family about it, as I feared I wouldn't be taken seriously, but I was terrified. I haven't been into the woods since that day, and always stayed home when my family went camping, even begging them not to go. I'm 21 now, and that incident was 10 or 11 years ago, and I still remember that silhouette and the sounds of those bones snapping. I've done tons of research, and my only conclusion to what happened is that I narrowly escaped a skinwalker. I'm tearing up from fear right now as I write all of this down, remembering that horrific night. I hope you enjoyed my retelling, and if anyone out there has any other explanation on what this could have been, please tell me in the comments if this gets used in a video. If you've read it this far, thanks for reading. All the best. Signed, Sean. Number 2. Hey Tattooed, I have a deep woods story, and it's really wild, but I swear on my life it really happened. It was September in central Idaho. Autumn had come to the mountains, and with it bow hunters looking for mountain goats. My cousin, let's call him Vern here for privacy, is an avid hunter, and he's been all over North America hunting various game. Bears in Alaska, wild hog in Texas, bighorn sheep in Wyoming, but his favorite hunting area was the Lemhi mountain range in central Idaho. Our extended family has been hunting in those mountains for generations, and we know every river bottom and mountain peak like many people know their own neighborhood. Mountain goats are a fascinating animal to hunt. They live well above the tree line in rocky environments. They're sure-footed and can climb near vertical slopes. Hunting these animals requires one to venture into these dangerous areas. You have to be mindful as you pursue an animal like that. One wrong step on a rocky slope or one loose rock can mean you're not going home ever again. Vern was an expert mountain hunter. It's something he was just born to do. Vern decided to hunt in the Hayden River area. It's a familiar spot to most locals, and the area is home to plenty of mountain goats. The first mile of Vern's hike was uneventful as he climbed up into the canyon. The air was crisp, and his breath formed in great plumes as he progressed. The sun was just peeking over the mountains when Vern came to a small deer trail. He decided it might be a nice shortcut from his usual route and took it. A few 100 feet up the trail, he saw something odd pop out from behind a tree. It was a man. He was dressed in a light denim coat and jeans and was carrying a small backpack. My cousin stopped for a second to get his bearings, unsure of where this guy had come from. The man waved at him with both arms. One of them was holding an older-style hunting bow. Acknowledging him, Vern waved back. Although the man looked to be physically fine, it was clear he was emotionally distressed. He yelled out something my cousin couldn't quite hear and waved his arm, indicating that my cousin should follow him. Vern didn't get any bad vibes from this man and could tell he was genuinely in need of some help. He began to make his way up the canyon, following this mystery man. Vern could never gain any ground on this guy. He was always just far enough away that he couldn't talk to him. Periodically, the man would stop and turn towards him to make sure Vern was still following. Every time he looked back, Vern could see the worry on his face. My cousin did his best to remain calm and keep a smile on his face, unsure who or what he was being led to. It was peculiar, Vern thought as he hiked. He hadn't seen any other vehicles on his drive up to the trailhead. Perhaps he came in from another ridge. What could he possibly be leading him to? He figured one of his hunting party had been hurt and needed help. Of course, he wouldn't have had to speculate if the man would just stop and talk to him for 5 minutes. Vern lost sight of the guy just past a turn in the trail. The trail opened up into an incredibly steep and rocky slope. He looked in every direction and couldn't locate the guy. when he heard a whistle. Looking up, he saw the guy about 500 feet up the rocky slope, waving at him. There was no possible way he could have gotten up that far in just a short time. He still didn't feel any fear or wariness about this weird situation. The man was waving more frantically now, practically begging Vern to follow him up the slope. With a sigh and a grunt, he started up the rocks. It was slow going. Every other step caused a mini rock slide and would cause him to continually lose his footing. Huffing and puffing on the cool, thin air, my cousin eventually made it to a small landing. It had taken him almost 45 minutes to get to the spot where he saw the man from below. There was no earthly way anyone could have done that scramble up that hill any faster. Totally exhausted and out of breath, Vern sat down on the stone landing. He looked around and couldn't see the man anywhere. As he scanned his surroundings, he saw something odd poking out of a boulder about 20 feet away from him. Walking over, he found a weathered boot. 2 boots, actually. Inside those boots, and under the boulder as well, were bones. Vern looked around once again for the man, but he never saw him again. Instead of feeling eerie or unnerving, Vern felt a sense of relief wash over him. These emotions weren't his own. What he felt seemed to come from all around him. He marked the spot with his GPS and decided to make his way down and call the authorities. The county sheriff's office responded, and he led them up to the canyon, to where the body was. It took 4 grown men to push the boulder out of the way, and when they did, they found the skeletized remains of a man. On the body, they found the hunting equipment and some personal effects. From a credit card in the wallet, they were able to identify the guy. He was a bow hunter that had gone missing almost exactly 53 years beforehand. Vern never wanted to be identified to the public or the missing hunter's family. He didn't want recognition for something like that. To him, it was just one of those bizarre mountain stories. He was happy that the family got closure, even if it was half a century later. The only thing that bothered him was the man leading him up the canyon, and with his strange and sudden disappearance, he had mentioned the waving man to the sheriff, but it was brushed off. When the news reports came out announcing the discovery, several photos of the man were published. Vern was absolutely shocked when he saw them. In the photos was the man he had seen leading him up the mountain to the body. It finally made sense to him. The man's distressful look, the constant checking, and Vern was following him, and the sense of relief he felt when the body was discovered. That man was desperate to get home, and through Vern, he was able to be reunited with his family. And that's my story. Thanks for reading it, Biker. Hope you have the best day. Signed, Randall. And there it is. All I have for tonight. I really hope you enjoyed these hair-raising tales from the deep woods. If you have any spooky stories of your own, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join me for more unexplained and unsolved content. So until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.